Will Assetto Corsa Evo bring these 11 most requested features to become the game to play in sim racing? Imagine a game with the focus and the sleek UI of ACC combined with the unparalleled simulation and competition of iRacing. Now, I read all your comments to my videos, and here's what you and me want to see in the highly anticipated Assetto Corsa Evo. First thing is modding. People want free and good mods for Assetto Corsa Evo. People are used to the mods that we can enjoy in Assetto Corsa, and it would be a step backwards if we can't use them or have similar mods in Assetto Corsa Evo. Now, I do think the landscape has changed on this. If you think about race department, this is where we're all used to getting our mods from over the years. That's now been bought by Overtake.gg, who are actually owned by Porsche Motorsport. They don't really always disclose it maybe, but they are wholly owned by Porsche. Porsche plays for Overtake.gg. So now Porsche owned race department. So what does that mean for mods of other cars in Assetto Corsa Evo? Is it going to continue like we've had with Assetto Corsa? I am a little bit cynical. I don't think we're going to quite have the same built for modding from the ground up as we've seen in AC. And I think that's because the developers, I think this is quite rightly, want to keep more of that money for themselves. And that brings me on to a sub point of modding, which is a marketplace for mods. So the modders can get a small fee. So we do know that some modders for Assetto Corsa are charging for their mods in AC. Things like, I believe, Pure and Soul and these sort of ones, you actually pay via Patreon to the modders there. And that means the modders take it a little bit more professionally, update the mods, and the quality is higher. I think Assetto Corsa will want to facilitate some sort of marketplace for modders, so they will control the quality of the mods, not in a bad way, but they'll be able to highlight perhaps the better mods, and they'll be more integrated in the game. I know BeamNG has something a little bit like this, where you can download community mods through the game. And I think this will create a strong modding community. At the moment, AC modding is obviously part of the game. We all expect it. There's not a huge amount of people, I think, playing AC a lot who are not playing it through mods, and we want to see that community continue. Because if you don't have mods in the Assetto Corsa Evo, the game is going to become very dated very quickly. And that's going to be a big problem, because the strength of Assetto Corsa has been its longevity. The game is like 10 years old and it's still going strong, and lots of different updates to the shaders and the weather and the skyboxes, etc. Things like doing those Tokyo runs and the traffic and all these kinds of things as well, no hesi. So these mods, hopefully they're going to come to Assetto Corsa Evo, but I don't think it's going to be the same free modding as we've seen in Assetto Corsa. Let's go on to feature number 2. And the second feature is VR. Assetto Corsa is a good game for VR. People say that Assetto Corsa Competizione is not a good VR game, being an Unreal Engine game. But to be honest, I don't experience any of the issues when I'm playing on my Pimax Crystal headset in Assetto Corsa Competizione that I have in, say, Rensport or other Unreal Engine games. It runs absolutely fine for me, but I am throwing a big old 4090 of it. So hopefully Assetto Corsa Evo is going to be a really well supported VR game, and it's going to be an immersive game where we can do lots of stuff. And I think Assetto Corsa Evo, we're going to get onto this, I think should be a sandbox for drifting, for drag racing, for racing on the streets, for racing on the tracks, for experiencing cars. And I think that comes into that mod marketplace. But hopefully VR is going to be a big feature of Assetto Corsa Evo. Let's get on to physics. So as we know, physics are arguably the most important thing for any sim racing game. It's because of the incredible physics that Assetto Corsa has managed to keep maybe top of the pile for a lot of people for about a decade or so. So we definitely want to see that continue in Assetto Corsa Evo. This might sound like a standard thing, like why am I even bringing about it? But remember Project Cars 3. Project Cars 3 tried to go for a much broader audience, and in doing so dumbed down the physics and was essentially, well, some people say it was a failure. And what I don't want is Assetto Corsa thinking, look, we want to try and get all of this casual crowd, and the way to do that is going to be to dumb down the physics. I think it should be accessible, which is going to be difficult to do in terms of the UI, but the detailed physics should still be there. We know they can do it. Unfortunately, they've had some key members of the team leave, but we hope that Assetto Corsa Evo is going to have still absolutely top tier physics. Moving on to AI now, and not necessarily a strong point of Assetto Corsa, but Assetto Corsa Evo is coming into an environment where we have GT Sophie using some kind of AI there, and also even say the Forza Motorsport AI system that's trying to judge when it comes to penalty collisions, etc. So AI in Assetto Corsa Evo, I think is going to be very important. I think Assetto Corsa Evo hopefully can be a game that caters to the single player crowd, to even the offline crowd, as we have so many racing games now that are online only. We've seen it with The Crew getting delisted. We've seen it with Test Drive Unlimited Solar Crown that's going to be online only. We've seen it with GT Sport where the servers have been shut down, and at some point what happened to Gran Turismo as well. So hopefully the combination of having really good and robust AI in single player will mean that it can be a good AI game. But let's get on now to that single player. So for single player, it's not just about having the AI. I think there also needs to be a structure there. Now, if anyone's done the Assetto Corsa campaign, it's not very inspired. It's quite dated. You go through and you get the medals. I think we need to have a much better single player campaign in Assetto Corsa Evo. Maybe something with a little bit of narrative, maybe something involving credits where we can kind of upgrade our cars, tune our cars to race and beat faster cars, and then use those credits to buy faster cars and go up the pyramid that way. When we think of the best single player racing games, probably think of stuff like the TOCA games or things that gave you that narrative, or the OG Gran Turismo games. And actually that's sort of been left by the wayside in newer racing games. Gran Turismo 7, I don't like the cafe menu system. Forza Motorsport, even worse when it comes to single player in my opinion. So I think Assetto Corsa Evo, if they can create an incredible single player campaign with meaningful stakes and kind of that sense of progression, as well as having AI and it being offline, it's a lot to ask, but I think that would make a lot of people very happy. Moving on to wheels now, I think it's non-negotiable that Assetto Corsa Evo needs to be a really good experience on a wheel. We've seen Forza Motorsport has been difficult to set up on wheels. They've just added True Force. I think for Assetto Corsa Evo, stuff like True Force needs to be there right at the beginning, and it needs to work super well on a wheel. When you take something like BeamNG, it's very hard to actually get it working nicely on the wheel. I think Assetto Corsa Evo out of the box needs to be a great wheel experience. Is it that important that it's good on controller? Again, they might try and go for the super casual market or appeal more to casuals with a controller, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Gran Turismo is great on a controller, but I think Assetto Corsa Evo needs to be honest, the benchmark of driving with a wheel. Now, this is going to be a big one for a lot of people, and I don't want people saying that I'm not thinking about the casual crowd, because to be honest, I sit more on the casual side of sim racing, and this one has to be in, surely. Massive open world maps. We've seen stuff like the Canyon maps and the Tokyo maps, and modding them into Assetto Corsa, and also people adding stuff like that into BeamNG. Free roam traffic AI needs to be included in Assetto Corsa Evo. It needs to be default, and I think that will actually make it a killer game. This is where a lot of the interest is in Assetto Corsa when you look at the videos that do very well on YouTube, but it's quite difficult to get those mods running. If you can build that into the game, if that can be in Assetto Corsa Evo at launch, an open world, I mean, what a tantalizing prospect that basically no other game will be able to compete with, being a great sim on the road and also in the open world. Let me know what you think about that one. Now on to another one that casuals are going to be excited about, and it's about console support, and it's not in the way that you might think. Yes, we want the game to run well on consoles. You look at something like Test Drive Unlimited Solar Crown, that looks to be really struggling to run on consoles. This one we want to be 60 frames a second for that smoothness and responsiveness, but I think it should also run well ideally on something like the Steam Deck. Now I said wheels are going to be the priority, not controllers, but imagine taking your Steam Deck and connecting it up with your wheel and just having your Steam Deck sat on top and playing it there. What an amazing experience that could be. So we want the game to be scalable. We want it to look amazing, obviously, if you're throwing a 4090 at it, but you also want it to run on basic systems. And Assetto Corsa has been able to do that over the last 10 years, and that's why it's one of the most popular games on Steam. Now, this one might be controversial. I'm going to talk about cars now. I don't think Assetto Corsa Evo should be forcing people to collect hundreds of cars about which you don't care. We've seen that with Gran Turismo and seen it with Forza, that they just throw cars at you and actually you don't really care too much about them. I would much rather, like the original Assetto Corsa, have a much smaller roster of cars that you actually care more about, that are more detailed, and you have that progression in terms of owning them. I'd love to see more road cars as well. I'd love the tuning to be really meaningful. Assetto Corsa is such a good simulator. When I went out to drive my Mazda MX-5 racing in Spain, I practiced on Assetto Corsa and I was able to get up to speed compared to other drivers because I'd done that sim racing. And I want to have the same feeling in Assetto Corsa Evo for people that are going from maybe doing sim racing to trying driving road cars in real life. It should be the best place to do it. Now, what about GT3s? I don't think GT3 should necessarily be the focus on Assetto Corsa. Yes, we know they're going to be GT3s, but honestly, I think they should switch tack and go for an ACC2 for the best-in-class GT3 experience, because I'm worried that we're going to have another GT3 obsession and it's not going to be as good for road cars. Talking now about private multiplayer, yes, we need private multiplayer. Basically, we need the ability to fill the grid with AI drivers. As a game like Assetto Corsa, we've seen that Forza Motorsport sometimes struggling to fill lobbies. Gran Turismo 2 now as well, the lobbies don't have the depth. So sim racing can ebb and flow. And for this game to have longevity, Assetto Corsa Evo having private multiplayers where you can race with a few friends and the rest with bots, I think is going to be very, very, very useful. Coming on to another big one, the penalty system. This is something that Assetto Corsa Evo is going to have to deal with. It's been an advancement in sim racing since the original Assetto Corsa. How are they going to do it? Are they going to take the iRacing approach where if you read the rulebook, they say they don't apportion blame, they just give a penalty to each car involved in an instant? Are they going to take the GT7 way, which is kind of a little bit strict and doesn't always tell you? Or are they going to take the Forza Motorsport way, which can be a bit forgiving, and it tries to work out which driver has been at blame? Now, to do that kind of AI assessment of a lot of incidents and train it, I don't think Assetto Corsa Evo is going to be able to do that. I don't think they have the manpower. I don't think they have maybe the people that have been testing the game compared to the might of Sony that set up their own AI division and seem to work on GT Sophie, for example, or Microsoft that's so big in AI. So I don't think we're going to get a really advanced penalty system in Assetto Corsa Evo. So maybe they should go for the iRacing approach and keep it kind of don't make contact. If you do make contact, it doesn't matter who's at fault. You're both going to get a penalty. And maybe that's actually the best way of having clean racing. Coming on to UI now, I think we need a fully fleshed out UI that's very modern. The Assetto Corsa UI really hasn't aged well, and I think having a UI that's going to be able to sort of incorporate different elements of racing and whatever else might come in mods is going to be very important. And I haven't really liked a lot of modern racing UIs. I don't really like the Forza Motorsport menu system, for example. The Rennsport UI system is a little bit bland, so I think it needs something in the middle. You have Gran Turismo that's quite stylish. You have iRacing that's also very old, but they're bringing out new UI. And probably one of the best places to start, especially with Radar, is actually their own game, Assetto Corsa Competizione. So hopefully we're going to get a really nice UI that's going to show us tyre temperatures, brake temperatures, all these kind of things, and a radar as well. So there you have it. These are the 11 features that would make Assetto Corsa Evo the ultimate sim racing game. But what do you think? Are there any other features that you're hoping to see? Drop a comment below and make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the future of sim racing.